Hello and welcome to SCM This Week. My name is Beth Rennie. I'm Editor-in-Chief at ASCM and I am joined by our CEO, Abe Eshkenazi. Hi, Abe.
Hey, Beth. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
So this past week, your article was about something that the author called rapid experimentation. This journalist was writing about how big cities are using the concept of rapid experimentation to address their transportation challenges. And as you noted, there are numerous lessons that can be learned for supply chain professionals and then apply from that example. So can you share a bit more about that? And also, how can ASCM help?
A great point, because I think when you take a look at these organizations that are trying new items and new concepts or innovation, I think it's important to note that they're doing so from a comprehensive perspective as opposed to just a short-term fix that they're evaluating some of these investments. What's more important is the sort of the integration of and the involvement of staff and talented individuals within the organization. I think there's previously a perspective that you had to plan or, time for innovation. Let's set some time apart for innovation. I think what we're recognizing now is that innovation and opportunities exist in almost every aspect of supply chain right now, but you need to have talented individuals that can discern what is an appropriate investment for the short term that can sustain for the long term. So first, competent talent, having the appropriate set of talented resources for your organization that can evaluate opportunities. Secondly, tools and concepts, that they have the appropriate resources available to them to make the decisions and the implementation. And then we also talk about technical competencies for these individuals. That's the price of entry right now. What we're looking for is advanced management skills, the ability to discern and evaluate the challenges that are before you, develop ideas or solutions to those, test them out, and then double down on those investments. But more importantly, companies need to look and listen, not only to your employees, but to your customers and to your vendors. Opportunities are out there. They're just not maybe within your organization, but having an open conversation with your customers about what their expectations are, or your vendors on what their challenges are, can uncover some real opportunities for the organization.
All right, and you just mentioned staff, and one of the things you also talked about was that a lot of these cities are making these very creative and showing their adaptability, but they're doing it with reduced staff. They're also doing it with very simple tools and low-cost materials, but they're achieving great results. So what should supply chain professionals be thinking about when it comes to this kind of creativity and adaptability, and especially resilience in the coming months and years?
Interesting that we always think of innovation as a very complex, a very coordinated, resource-heavy, activity. I think what we're recognizing is that there are opportunities that exist at every level of the organization, and whether we're talking about the raw materials to production, to recycling, reusing, every aspect of the supply chain needs to be evaluated in terms of how can we make some quick changes or rapid implementation of innovation that can pay off for the organization. More importantly, coordinating these activities is a huge step, because as we've talked about over the weeks about supply chains being a highly synchronized organization and effort within the organization, you need to ensure that whatever changes that you make, they are communicated effectively throughout the supply chain, not only from your vendors, but to your customers, so that they can understand why you're making the changes, and more importantly, they can adapt to those changing dynamics for your organization. As well as the idea of prevention and response. There are innovative ideas or solutions that can help you prevent these types of disruptions, but there's also opportunities to respond to the disruption after it occurs. Obviously, you can't prepare for every disruption that occurs. I mean, that would just be beyond the capacity of most organizations. What we can do is start to prioritize the types of disruptions that can have a significant impact on your organization, and then identify what you would do in case of. So this speaks to the agility that organizations need to have in their supply chains, that they can rapidly respond to changes either in production or in the manufacturing or in delivery or warehousing. The opportunities exist, but you need to identify what you're responding to as a prevention idea versus a resiliency, a response activity. Obviously, we're in the middle of a huge disruption right now, so most of the focus right now is on the recovery and or preparing for the recovery for organizations. But a lot of attention, or the appropriate attention, should be to the prevention of disruptions in the future. May not be the same. It most likely will never be the same as we're facing right now. But providing organizations with different responses to different types of disruptions will ensure that you're sustainable, but more importantly, that you're adaptive to the changes and the supply chain criticality in the future.
Okay, and right now, as well as in your Friday column, you talked a lot about the importance of listening to the voice of the customer, but also employees, partners, other stakeholders. So why is this kind of coordination and collaboration so important as we work toward recovery?
Yeah, it's a visibility. And I think that's probably one of the hallmarks of our supply chains right now is increasing visibility into every aspect of the supply chain. So that includes your tier one suppliers, but also their suppliers. As we've seen, the disruption has had a significant impact on the extended global supply chain. So what was considered a normal business in terms of supply chain and resourcing and sourcing from across the globe has become a big challenge today, obviously with the disruption to the logistics, especially air travel, that we've seen significant responses to that. Commitment, I'm going to go back to a point that we raised in the beginning, and that's a commitment to professional development. I think too often we've seen organizations pull back during disruptions. I think this provides an opportunity to double down on your employee development and commit to not only the professional development, but listening to them and identifying ways that they can enable your organization to respond. There's a new definition of customers today. I think there are a lot of organizations are recognizing that vendors are customers as well, that you need to pay attention to what makes them successful in order so you can be sustainable and responsive to your customers as well. We need to be concerned about all aspects of our relationships, and the coordination, collaboration is as high, the expectation is as high today. This requires a cross-disciplinary approach in an organization. So that means supply chain professionals working across the enterprise with their counterparts to identify how to respond and mitigate the types of disruptions, I think is a critical responsibility that we have right now for our supply chain. Looking, listening, and engaging your employees as well as your customers and your suppliers, it's a good recipe for success.
All right, thank you so much, Abe, and thanks to everyone who's watching. Quick reminder to please follow us on our LinkedIn and YouTube channels so you can see SCM This Week each Tuesday. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Beth.